Hi there. Welcome to Transit Talk, Human Design Transits, real talk in real time. I'm Kathy.
I'm Jess. We meet up about every 6 days to explore the current human design transits and how they're showing up in our lives, and we'd love for you to join us.
We're talking energy in the moment, what we're feeling, what we're noticing, and what the transits are stirring up inside us and all around us. So, whether you're joining us live or listening later, we're glad you're here. Let's get into it. We are trying to have something at the beginning of this that kind of tells people a little bit what it is, because we have released Transit Talks as a podcast, and if someone puts it on at the beginning and we just start being silly right away, they're like, what the heck is this craziness? So we were trying to do a little intro, and poor Jess, she did redo her schedule for us to be here, but Jess is dealing with not one, but two sick kiddos. So I'm sorry you're dealing with all that, but that was a
Yeah.
valiant attempt.
That was the most my brain. Okay, so we clearly know my brain's not here.
It's okay.
Oh my goodness, it's
Um,
so funny.
So today we're talking about the sun in gate 24 and the earth in gate 44 with this transit report. Jess, what are you showing up as today?
I'm showing up.
That's right.
That's the way I am. I'm showing up. I
I
am.
feel like your
I'm.
hair is kind of a mental loop,
It,
visualized, right?
yeah. I'm.
Mental loop. So
Yeah, the mental loops there. I think I am returning to. I don't know. It's a lot of mental functioning right now. Just so anybody who's like, what is happening right now? My 8-year-old had stomach flu last night. She was up every 45 minutes, like every hour. So if you've ever had very young children, newborns, you know the mental fog where your brain is just not quite there functioning. So that's where I am. But she's doing well. We're doing well. We're here and not needing to know. I guess that's what it is right now. I don't need to know. I
right.
don't need to know exactly what it is. We're here.
Yeah. I am wearing a pattern of the past. It's my vintage shirt. That's my gate 44 about recognizing past patterns that come from mental loops. Both of these are individual energies. This is a very individual style shirt in a retro pattern that felt like it had that gate 44 energy about it for me. So for those of you, if you haven't tuned in before, we like to just kind of play with this and try to visually represent the energies a little bit. So if you're listening to this, none of it'll make sense, but on Spotify, YouTube, or live in the group watching with us, you can see us and our silliness when we do that sort of thing. So I am excited because this week, when we talk about the energies, I'm going to use my new book. I got my new book from Chetan and autographed. So when I'm looking up the lines, I just love the way he talks about the lines versus the way others. Oh, Mary's here. I'm going to let Mary in. So that's just really good vibe. So, Mary, I love the new hair.
Thank you.
Isn't it fun? Yeah.
So much fun. Oh my
Thank
goodness. I was
you.
channeling you this morning.
Yes. I've got my pink too. It's a
It's
pink
fun.
pen
We've
today.
all
I got
got
pink
pink.
here,
So for
right?
anybody who's just listening, Mary has the most fabulous pink hair. I absolutely love that. And I'm wearing a pink shirt and I have a pink bow.
And
And
it's
then
new pink hair.
Kathy also has her pink and it's got little pink dots on it. Much
My
fun.
pink shirt has some pink dots and I have a pink tank under it. So it's a pink
Yeah.
pen. And I got my bright pink lipstick, of course.
Mm,
Of course. Of course. Because I always have to have bright something. So we were just starting to talk about gate 24, and I don't have this energy defined in my chart. I know Jess does. What about you, Mary? No?
I do not.
Okay. Jess, where's it at in yours? I forgot what you said.
Yeah, so I'm a 4 ways. The
It's
the interesting thing about this is you might have to explain this because my brain's not working.
the sleep
Often it's divided into the 4 quarters.
right.
That's divided by the Sphinx, right? And that's the starting point of each of the quarters. So the 4 ways is actually the ending point before it moves into the new quarter. And so my incarnation cross is the 4 ways. So
I have never heard that explanation before. So to translate this, because I was a little technical, I'm going to translate it if that's okay.
yes.
Because there's an incarnation cross called the Cross of the Sphinx, and those are 4 gates that are on the Identity Center, and they're all about direction. And so if you follow the mandala around, those 4 gates, the gates prior to each of those are the 4 gates of Jess's incarnation cross. They are like the point where you shift directions.
Mhm.
Those gates are often the impetus for the shift. And so the 4 ways, people with that cross have 4 distinct parts in their life that shift based on those. And do you know which one you're in right now? Have you calculated that? Which one
so
are you in the 24 right
I'm
now?
I'm in 44, which is cool.
Okay.
So to answer your question, 24 for me in my chart is on my design side in my earth.
So that
So
means it's your purpose. And
yeah.
wow.
So I had to sit with this one for a little while.
Yeah, Jess and I are going through the gene keys together, and we have been going through the activation sequence. And so next week, this next time, we'll be talking about that. So interesting, right?
So perfect.
Right?
So if you think about this as kind of like the beginning, and then the 4 ways is kind of like the end, the beginning and the end. Sounds very biblical.
And before the new beginning, because there is
Yeah.
no real end, right?
Yes, exactly. It
Right?
keeps going through that cycle. Yeah, I love that nuance. We ready for the screen share?
Let's do gate 24. Awesome.
It feels to me like sixth line energy that you're about to jump over and do the
Yeah.
next thing.
Right?
Yeah.
And she has the 24 and the 44 for Jess in the 6th line. So
In
it
the
very
sixth.
much is 6th line. It
100%.
very much is right before that next gate, because the
Yeah.
6th line is always looking to that next gate. So you're just checking out that Sphinx all the time.
Yeah.
Well, look up there.
The
It's nice
irony
to
of
look
that.
at.
Yeah. So we're looking at the transit here. Is it showing? I
Yes.
think it's sharing.
Yeah, it's
Perfect.
first try.
Well, I saved it to the computer.
Checking to make sure that we're live streaming in the group. You keep talking.
So we're looking at the sun right now in gate 24. If we see over here, 24 is in the ajna, which is an awareness center. Above that, we have the head, which is the pressure center, where we're getting a lot of that inspiration, the pressure coming through here. Today, Kathy's doing 44, which is the earth. And this is over here on the spleen, the splenic center. Today's a new moon, isn't it?
I don't remember the exact time, but
Hours.
it's only this afternoon.
Yeah. I put my new moon cycle support thing on from Carla, which was really cool. The kids are purging, and stomach flu, how that goes. I'm going to have it later today for the new moon. And that's really coming into the energy that we're looking at with the 24, because a lot of the 24 is like looking at what you're leaving behind to move forward, right? It's about this knowing. If I could be something right now, it would be a coin. The way I like to think about the 24 is that it's a coin flipping over and over until suddenly it just lands. There's no amount, as I have found very true in my life, of doing that you can make it happen. It's just a natural mutation. I'm like, I need to know this thing. And the more I try and force it, the more it's like, nope, this is not happening. You have to allow it, surrender into it. But when it lands, it's like that aha moment. It's like, now I have the knowing. Now I have the understanding. If we're looking at the channel right here, the channel of awareness. So we're coming from the 61. So we're having all of that inspiration, all of that mystical knowledge coming in. And then it's the 24 taking that, and it's like, how do I bring this into form? And so really asking yourself, if you're feeling this energy right now, like, is this something I need to know, right? This is knowing who you are as a person, trying to figure out and know, like, is this the unknowable, or letting it have its process to come to that place where it's going to land? For me, this shows up like there's a lot of noise in my mind. It's called the design of a thinker. There's always that mental chatter trying to figure that thing out in your mind, but just surrendering to the fact that it does get to land. That coin does get to eventually go. And then it's, aha, I've got it. I've got that knowing. And then on the flip side of that, there's also that fear. There's a big fear in the 24 of not knowing, right? It's like, oh, I don't know the thing. Like, how am I supposed to explain it? And as an individual gate as well, part of the individual energy is to be able to explain, right? It's like, here's this thing. How do I explain it? But sometimes you don't know it yet, and it hasn't landed. Noticing where there might be pressure for you to explain something that hasn't quite landed yet in your life.
Wow, your brain really worked well there. You said you had your brain today, and that was impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was beautiful energy, beautiful explanation of the energy. I've really been sitting with this because I wrote my blog last night and wrote it pretty quickly. Like I had it done before the post, like I had it done and published. And I'm like, the transit hasn't even actually hit. But I was really in that place of getting it, this idea of the mental loops and trying to make sense of something that we need to just relax into our body and feel into, right? And that 44, like how that supports us. And you know, at the risk of getting a little heavy right away, I wrote my blog in reflection after I had just come home from this memorial service for this young man who I knew since he was 3 years old, who was killed about 5 weeks ago in an accident. He and his girlfriend were killed instantly. And the man was arrested for vehicular homicide because they suspected it was a road rage incident, which made it doubly tragic or triply tragic because two young people died because a 65-year-old man in a truck lost his temper. I was really thinking about how at that service, this beautiful service, how quickly the mind goes into these loops of trying to make sense in a way that keeps us safe. That can't happen to my daughter because she doesn't do X, Y, Z. That can't happen to the ways we try to find the thing, right? When we watch the news and we go, what part of town was it? Okay, I'm okay. That can't happen here. It's the tendency that makes people say stupid stuff like, what was she wearing? We're trying to make sense of it. And we're trying to feel safe because of that. And so I noticed those tendencies in that situation to start to do that. When really what we need to do is just quiet that part and say, okay, this doesn't make sense. There is no explanation for this. There are no answers. And all the answers make the situation worse if you even try to express them most of the time, right? Like when someone has had, as I know, Mary, when someone has faced a tragic loss and people say things in their attempt to probably make themselves feel better. They say things that make the situation worse when really what people need is for people to just be present, feel into the discomfort.
Yep.
And so recognizing these patterns where we don't allow ourselves to feel the discomfort and we get caught up in the mental chatter of trying to make it safe, right? So that's what I wrote about in my blog. And I really sat with it and had to look at it again this morning. Even I was like, was this okay for me to talk about? I didn't name any names. I honestly think she's somebody who would she's not a human design person, the mom. So I think there was nothing disrespectful in there. I didn't really even tell many details. I just talked about my process. And even the process of when you see who shows up and who doesn't. Everybody has different ways of dealing with things. We start the mental loop of judgment, even when we don't mean to. The whole like, well, why didn't this person show up? Why did this happen this way? So it was interesting to sit and reflect on these energies in that situation.
And I think the way you shared that was beautiful. It's really important to have those real life examples to kind of land for you, other than just like, hey, here's the knowledge of it. Like, here's a lived experience of it. I think that's very helpful for people. So thank you for sharing that. And I feel 44. That's my design son.
Yeah.
I can definitely feel that. And, we talked about before that's in the spleen, right? So this is survival. And I know in my life, there has been a theme previously until I really started diving into my human design where it was fear of past things that have happened, fear of patterns and how they could repeat themselves in the future, and looking at those patterns and getting stuck with those patterns going, this cannot happen. This cannot make sure and watch this thing that it doesn't show up. So looking at, in your life right now, while we're in this energy and noticing any place where you're like past patterns that have happened and where there's some form of like a survival, this is going to bring in some kind of survival aspect for me that's shown up like with my kids.
Got stuck
Yeah.
in brain loops this morning. I woke up early and I was going over in my head these situations that I still have no control over. I've done everything I can. I responded how I could. And I just kept getting whipped up into this froth. And all of a sudden I started singing Let It Go in my head to try and overwrite these loops because I was like, let it go, let it go. to try and just, because I was like, nothing else was working. I couldn't think my way out of it. It was too early in the morning to do anything. I'm like, I'm just going to sing it in my head.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing, because you feel it and you're like, I need to solve this. Sometimes there is not an answer, or it's not the time for an answer. Some things are just not to be known. There are some things in this life that we just will not know. Sitting with that uncertainty and finding that safety in the uncertainty. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I love that you sang. So that
Right?
for me, it's like dancing and then singing too. To just move it so you get back into your body,
Yep.
finding that safety in your body.
Now I hear I like to move it, move it. You know, you get it in your head, right? Well, you know, I was thinking about this myself too, because I have gate 44 defined. I don't have 24, but gate 44 is my design Neptune. So, and Neptune, and I know it's Neptune this Friday is going to be conjunct with Venus. I feel like with that, I noticed Rebecca's here on the Zoom. If she wanted to come out, I would love to hear the astrology take on this, because I know that this Venus Neptune energy is really going to have a big impact on how we are recognizing these patterns, even though Neptune and Venus are going to be in 25. This whole energy this week with the Earth in 44 is grounding us in recognizing patterns of the past. We're having this beautiful conjunction of Neptune and Venus later this week.
And Mars, Pluto are in their final opposition today with the new moon as well. So there's a
and this new moon is
Friday. My friend texted me. I can't even remember, but I remember on Friday the universe gave us a smiley face. It was like
this past Friday.
It was the moon.
It was Mars, Venus, and the moon.
Yeah, but they made like the two little eyeballs on the smiley face with the crescent moon. I was like, that is just amazing. Like the universe.
And apparently the North Node was right there too, what I heard from some astrologers. And then also this Friday when we have Venus and Neptune, thank you, Brain Network, when they are conjunct, that's when this beautiful spiritual energy dealing with relationship, that's when we're doing our masterclass, Jess. Yeah. So if anybody's listening to this, come into the Intuitive Human Design group and sign up to do our free masterclass. It's the first step in the karma, understanding the karma in your human design chart. The awesome stuff we did in Austin with Chetan Parkin. This is a little teaser into what's available, and I'm very excited to share it with you guys.
There's close to going into gate 12, the channel too. So more intuitive connection.
Yeah, I love all the little things that people say. I listen to so much pop astrology that I try to remember. Some of it is just like pop HD. You just take it with a grain of salt. But I do love whenever I hear stuff like, because I'm a Gemini rising, that Jupiter is going to bring all my blessings in the next couple months. So I'm like, I'll take that, right? Because when we focus on that, we're attracting it, right? So that is pretty cool. I wanted to talk about the lines a little bit more this time, because with this book, there's a little more details than what we had, or a little bit. And this is the revised version of Chetan's Book of Lines. This new version that he just released has more stuff in the back. It has sections about the circuitry, the centers, a little bit more stuff about all of that than the old book had. It also has the design of plants and interesting things like that. So the mammalian gates. But gate 24, since we're still on that, do you have your book there, or do you want me to go through it?
I have the book in front of me, and I'll touch on it. And then if you want to add, because I feel like there's probably a lot of depth to that. So, yeah.
Okay. Because you have the other one.
Yeah.
You have this. We love our human design books.
We do.
The Complete
All
Raby
of us.
King, which is the one that Ra did, but it doesn't have a lot of details about the lines. Okay.
So for 24, line 1, that's where we are right now. The sin of omission. What's really interesting with this one, in the first line, we've got Neptune and detriment. And the way Ra speaks to this is, you notice when you have Neptune in the first line, it's not a solid foundation, which we can feel right now in this energy, right? With the loops. The first line and the fourth line are those foundational lines. With this first line, there's not really the structure of that stability because it is so mutated, this energy of that knowing that it's almost like, again, if you think about that coin that's just flipping, it hasn't landed yet in that first line. Noticing the sin of omission. What else did I want to add about that? So for this line, really kind of, the first line, we're looking into that investigation piece, right? The investigator wants to go and learn all the things. But a lot of this you can't learn. It's that spontaneous mutation, that aha moment. So sitting in that discomfort and seeing how you feel and where you feel that and what that brings up for you for that first line, and really asking yourself, what do I need to know? Like, what do I really need to know? And at the core of that is like, I need to know who I am, right? And all the other things will unfold in time or not, because some things are going to be unknowable. So sitting in that energy. You wanted to add anything that was there?
Rebecca just put in the comments, the asteroid Hecate, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, we all said it differently.
Is opposite the new moon right now, reveals how we can experience transformation. And that's in HD gate 28.6. So that's interesting. I'll have to look up more about that asteroid. I'm not as well versed in the asteroids. Always tells the story about how Ra told him, well, write your own book of lines, because he didn't really like a lot of Ra's language. So he wrote his own book. The way he refers to the line 1 is being principled, a constant need to review what is personally meaningful. You mentioned that Neptune was in detriment, but the sun, which is what is highlighting gate 24 right now, is 24 line 1, is in exalted. So you have the clear intent to proceed in life while aligning firmly with your principles. Your mental processes can excuse you from living your own truth for one rationale or another. These mental processes, these loops, can keep us away from what we really even know as truth, because we get stuck in those loops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for bringing up the sun exalted. I believe the quote Ra used was, the ends justifies the means. Right now, you have all this noise in your head and discomfort going through that process of the 24, but it's justified in the end when you have that aha moment in the rational process. It's that middle ground that feels really uncomfortable and could be very acoustic. How that shows up for some people is potentially the ringing in the ears or just that noise they're hearing. So looking at that, reassessing and past thinking as well.
I haven't heard that about the ringing in the ears.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. So as in his book, in addition to what you said, inspiration that demands a reassessment of past thinking before a rational concept can be established. So there's a positive to all of this, right? The gate 44 that we're going to move to in a minute has us looking at the patterns of the past, this energy of reassessing and running back through things, looking at things one more time. What did I learn from that? Those are all good, positive uses of this energy, right? Because it's part of the channel of awareness.
Absolutely. And then line 2, we go into recognition. With line 2, it's not necessarily that they're seeking what the answer is, what they need to know until someone comes knocking, because we're looking in that foundational, the first line, the second line, third, and then we go to more of the transpersonal. So this is more on that personal level, but there's also this piece of getting recognition. Am I going to get credit for the knowing? Or is this something I'm going to say to someone and then they're going to get this piece of recognition? And just knowing that it is a very individual process. This is your own process. This is your own experience of it. He was talking about how with the exalted, you're often called out after the mutations happened, which could be a more comfortable process because that's when you've had that landing, you've had that aha moment, you've had that knowing. But in detriment, what can happen is that you're called out from your hermiting, from your line 2, right? And you're like, oh, what is this knowing? But then you have that pressure. And again, it's a spontaneous thing. So it's not necessarily like you can research it more, or you can do more things to find and have that moment where it lands and have that aha. So noticing how that could show up for you. Have I been called out and I don't yet have that answer? I don't yet have that knowing, my own individual knowing for it to share.
So with this being such a strong energy for you, and you have this defined head in Ajna, which is completely the opposite of Mary and I with our openness, how do you respond to that when you notice that? For people who are listening, if they catch themselves in these ruminating loops of rationalization, what would you recommend?
So the biggest thing for me, this is where the positive intelligence comes in, is coming out of my mind, especially because that's where part of my split is. I can feel it when I am stuck in my mind, when I'm stuck in these loops. You have some kind of a disruptor. Like, what is that disruptor? Is it singing? Is it dancing? Is it something in that moment where you're tuning into your body? I've shared before, like just feeling your fingertips really sitting and rubbing your two fingertips together so gently and softly that you actually notice every single ridge on your fingertips, and then rubbing them together, like finding ways to come back into your body, finding ways to find the safety. That doesn't stop. That thinking, that rationalizing process, it's that noise, that concept, it doesn't necessarily go away, but it doesn't get to drive the ship, if that makes sense. So it's like a part of me, but that's not where my focus goes, and kind of putting it in the back seat for a little bit until it has its moment. And then it's like, woohoo, here's the thing, it's landed. And that's where you have the funny little analogies I always
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. I think that's helpful. So did you want to continue with the rest of the lines? We spent a lot of time on that one.
The
Probably
third
don't have that
line.
time on all.
Yeah. Did you want to do so deeply went into these, but again, this is something that's very pertinent in my energy.
Oh, let me just
Did
say,
you-
in Caitan's, he calls it renewing, attracting a loving environment while under duress. All adversity brings growth when you remember who and what truly aids and inspires you.
Ooh, I love his description. The third line we're looking at is the addict. And, this is again looking at that third line. What does it mean? The third line, bonds made and broken. This is like a very courageous energy. And sometimes with the third line, these are the people that you see and they're sharing something and you're like, what is this? But it's a very individual knowing. And so we're still in that place where it's that interpersonal until we start to shift into the fourth line. This is where it starts to get interesting with the transpersonal.
Yeah. Chaitan calls that line being decisive, trying to think your way through life. The shadow of the 24th gate is addiction. A lot of people interpret that as literal. It can be literal addiction, but it's the addiction to the idea that there is an answer and that you have to find it. It's this like dog with a bone kind of addiction, this energy that won't let it go. It can come across in the two extremes of frozen, like paralysis. So a numbing out kind of addiction can come out of that, right? Because you're just like, I can't figure it out, so I can't do it. Or you can have, and this isn't just the third line, it's just made it come up because you mentioned the word addiction for the whole line. My disco ball says I'm on the nose with this one because it's shining right on my nose. The other expression of the shadow is addictive, which is where a lot of addictive behaviors can be. When you start having these dog with the bone kind of behaviors, whether it be towards an idea or a behavior, you can see that this is where the shadow energy comes out. Then you can look to the gift of invention to be able to be okay and find that city, the silence, the ability to quiet the mind.
Can I share a story with y'all?
Yes,
course.
please.
Something I recently figured out in the last year is that when I am struggling, I love to research. I assumed when I got into human design that I was going to be a first line with the amount of research that I love to do. And I dig in and I have a ton of logical circuits. But what I have discovered is that is a way for me to feel like I am in control, even though I'm not really learning anything I can do anything about. It's not necessarily assuaging my fears or anything, but I'm doing something and convinced myself that it was productive and useful. Look at all this stuff. Occasionally I learn something and it's not all bad, but I realized it was a busy tool. I really think, given the way that Kathy explained that, I have been caught in the addictive side of looking for answers because surely there's an answer. I can be in control and it'll be all right if I can just find the answer, if I keep searching and digging. I feel that so deep
Yeah, and I feel like because I know your design and I know mine, and I feel like that's a lot. A lot of people were like, "Are you sure you're not a first line?" It's our open ajnas. That open ajna is always trying to get the answers to be certain. I do wonder if that's in. It would be interesting. I don't know Phil's chart as well, but I know he has a defined ajna. It would be interesting to see if he has it and if you're amplifying it up.
He has an open ajna, but
Okay.
he and River define their head and ajna.
Oh, that's what it is. That
Yeah.
when you're with them, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Part I found in my life that there's beauty in the mystery of life. If everything was certain and we knew how things were going to play out, like what fun is that? Where's the magic to it? Where's the mystery? Where is the excitement of like, well, I don't know how this is going to turn out. Stepping into that energy when you start is like, okay, I need to actively choose this way of thinking, changing how we think. We've been taught, like, are you sure? Are you certain? This is it. Getting to know that it's us experiencing ourselves here. How am I experiencing this thing? Not necessarily having to control it. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
And I love, Rebecca said, love your addiction with disco balls. That was so perfect.
Right? Yeah, I thought about if I was, I'm doing 44, but if I was doing 24, I'd have to bring all my shoes out here. My true addiction. Shoes and maybe earrings, that's the other thing. Like literally, I constantly like, you do not need another pair of earrings. But what did I buy 2 of when we were in that little store in Austin?
Needed those earrings because I've
did.
seen you wear them at least 4 times and you love them and they go with your outfit so perfectly. You absolutely.
Because whenever I say I don't need them, then the universe shows me that there's still more out there that I need. Okay, you started with 24, line 4. Do you want to?
Yes, so we're in line 4 right now, which is the Hermit, which can be confusing because the Hermit is line 2.
Well, we're reading that right now. We're not in it right now. We're in
Yes,
line
yes.
1.
Line 4 is where we're going to go right now. Line 1, yes, thank you.
We're reading. We're not going there yet.
There's
There's
not
sure we don't
like right
confuse
now,
everybody,
like
right?
like we're doing this quantum leap, and my guess
Right.
we're looking at line 4, the Hermit. Noticing when we're going into the 4th line, we're in that upper trigram. So we're looking at this as the foundational piece here. This is transpersonal. This piece of knowing needs to have interaction and bounce off of other people. There's a difficulty in analysis of this knowing. And there's this piece of like, I'm going to like go and hide and Hermit in that aloneness because I don't yet have the answer for people. But getting to interact with those people, with that community to find that self-expression so that this knowing can take its form.
So this one feels very different in Chaitan's interpretation. Usually they're just nuance, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm missing something, but it says 24 line 4, being attentive, cultivating mental clarity while in the company of others. You need to look for the balance between an easy mental pattern and a correct one. So I guess it's that individual cultivating of clarity and not allowing other people to influence your thinking.
Absolutely, because
It's
it's that
consistent,
individual.
but it almost sounds like one is saying go be by yourself and the other is saying it's about being with people. And it's really about honoring yourself regardless, right?
Honoring exactly that this energy has that pull with the 4th, right? To interact and bounce off of with others, but also honoring that it is individual. This is your individual process and taking that time to be alone, to refine that knowing before you step into that, right? And it was interesting with the 4th line that there's this piece of with the aloneness that you can have it in an empowered and disempowered with everything, right? And with the 4th line, sometimes you can step into this delusional place, this fantasy place, if you're not, like you said, coming into that connection with other people and bouncing it off of other people once you have that knowing. So noticing that. And then we go into the 5th line, which is confession. This is the courage to admit the mistakes of the past and standing up for your knowing. This is where you take all of that baggage of those past beliefs and say, hey, I used to be this way and I used to believe this, but now I've had this knowing land and now it's like this, leaving behind that baggage, leaving behind all those past beliefs and past patterns and starting to step into that place of this new knowing.
Yeah. And Chaitan calls it returning The resolution to renounce false trails and resume invention.
Mhm.
Yeah, that feels consistent.
Mhm. And then noticing, the fifth line, it's that practical coming out in a practical way. And then we have line 6, the gift horse. And so with the sixth line, that it has those 3 different stages. And the sixth line is here to take a look at the validity of what the fifth line is saying, like, is that valid? Is that not valid? And also noticing that potential to be death, especially in the 24th gate. So normally if you have when you have the individual sixth line, it's different than the tribal sixth line to really go, is this valid or is this not? Because sometimes you have that potential in that individual to have that piece of deafness. And that can go both ways. Ross spoke to that as sometimes you're just so busy in your own individual process that you're deaf to the possibility in something somebody brings to you, or that you're so acutely intertwined with it that you notice all of the things and start to shut them out.
Yeah, and I feel like the individual energy and the deafness is also about feeling that if you start to listen to anyone, you're going to lose your individual nature. So there's a certain amount of like, no, this is who I am, and I am not going to be tainted by the likes of you others, right? There's this really strong sense of that. And both these gates, 24 and 44, are both individual energy. So the 24-6 Chaitan calls relenting, dropping old concepts in the face of life's new offerings. Past missteps need not limit the range of new choices if you revisit your own clear authority. So like you said, looking at all those things in a 6th line always has had 3 phases, right? Looking at those things from the initial trial and error of your 3rd line phase in a way that owns the brilliant lessons that came from it and honors them. Okay. We just did a little course on 24. Man, you are very well versed in that gate, and it's nice to see because you have that as such a part of your incarnation cross.
I was like, what do you mean I'm supposed to find ground? Like, what are you talking about? Like, this makes no sense. Like, how am I supposed to, like, this is for my body. This doesn't even begin to, like, how do I ground into this? Ground into not knowing? That feels horrible. Until I started to dig deeper into it and really understand the beauty of it, the beauty of letting go.
Yeah.
I played with.
Yeah. And so 44, you're going to have a lot of insights in too. And this one, I feel like I have, I'll be honest, it's my design Neptune. I've looked at it, I've contemplated it, I've talked to others about it, but it's not something that I'm probably going to have the deep connection with that you will. But I would like to remind people that this is about patterns. It's in the I Ching, it's called meeting together. In any meeting of likes or opposites, acceptance and mutual tolerance is essential. He says, in all interactions, there is a need to remain alert to relevant instinctive clues rather than be distracted by ego, which is separateness, or by ego manipulation. Because the gate 44 is where the nose knows, right? The instinct of smelling a rat, something smells funny, and literal smell of being able to have what is that one called?
Olfactants.
Olfactants. There you go. Thank you.
Gonna get that from me.
Right? Sometimes people will smell something and know a certain person is there spiritually because they know the smell. By following your nose, you have instant access to your innate cellular memory that identifies how patterns of life are interwoven. And the shadow of this is interference. Okay. So that can show up with the 2 polarities of distrustful and misjudging. So these are those busybodies, right? The people who are always sticking their nose in where it doesn't belong. Right? That's the shadow. And then the gift is teamwork, which the ultimate expression is symmetry. So the first line in Chaitan's words is being alert, watching all internal sensations while interacting with others. You either pay attention to your instinctive warnings or ignore them and endure the outcomes. So this is really that foundation of paying attention to what your instincts are telling you. Gate 44 is on the spleen, and we know that's where our primal instincts live, right? Did you want to add anything from Roz, or do you want me to just go through this?
Run through them and then I'll add some at the end, I think would probably be.
Okay. 44.2 is being conscientious, watching any impulse to give yourself away. When you restrain any impulses to act carelessly, you can handle situations clearly. And then 44.3 is holding back, recognizing an occasional need to hesitate in asserting yourself. Trusting your instincts or needing to impress others makes you clear or not in your actions. Sometimes our instincts are not about what's good. There might be some ego involved. And to really check when you're addressing a pattern, recognizing a pattern because it's helpful or because it's impressive, right? I see this and look at how smart I am, right? 44 line 4 is forbearing, and that one is finding tolerance in your interactions with others. Being clear with your own intentions allows for you ever to have anyone else's support. And that one, the sun, is detriment. In 4 days, we will have that feeling of you often assume assistance from people despite your previously being distant towards them. So that's interesting to think about. Didn't really have any need for that person, but now I will assume that they're going to help me out. So that'll be something interesting to contemplate. I'm wondering what Ross says on that one. Do you have yours there for the 44?
I don't have the write out of that one specifically. So the 4 is honesty.
It doesn't say anything in that one. No problem. And then the 44.5 is integrating, upholding a presence that is exemplary. You align with the laws of nature and high integrity, or take advantage if you can. So that feels very fifth line, right? And the 44.6, withdrawing, protecting yourself from being overwhelmed. Distancing yourself from complex situations ensures your own well-being, but attracts criticism. So, and that is your 44. So I wonder if you have any more you want to say about the 44.6.
Yeah. So with the 44, the big thing that comes in there for me, especially through the gene keys that we're doing, is that teamwork piece. For me, that instinctual knowing when you meet somebody and you just know. And like you said, there's that cellular knowing that this is a person in your life. I don't know how this works and how you fit, but there's just this knowing within you that this is a person that's part of your team. But there's also the other side of that, where something for me that I've kind of struggled with is to let go of people, knowing who is part of that team, who is part of that network, who is part of that future patterning. You've had people in your life and they taught you things, but there's a point where you let people go.
Yeah.
Right. And so knowing in those new relationships and those new friendships and those new people in your life, sometimes you meet people and you're just like, this feels like I've known you 100 bazillion lifetimes, and you just have that connection. Part of that is that smell, but it's not necessarily for me an actual smell. It's just the feeling within my body.
Yeah. That pattern of when you recognize the patterns of the past to say, all right, this isn't working anymore, or this is not, people, what is it they say? There are people that are in your life for a moment. I don't know. There's a whole
A
thing.
season.
A moment, a season, and a lifetime, right? And so that doesn't mean that they're not just as important for that point in time. My daughter and I were just having this conversation when we went shopping to get some flowers. We were talking about how you have annuals and you have perennials and you have shrubs, and how when you have a beautiful garden, it is going to have that layering effect. The annuals are really colorful and they have so many flowers for one season, right? And you really enjoy them, but now they're gone and you need to get something new. Maybe you'll plant the same thing again next year. Maybe you'll put something completely different in there, a different color or whatever. But you've got the perennials that come back every year. Those are a lot of times the slow build. They say when you plant a perennial, the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, and the third year they leap. So it takes a while for a lot of these perennials to really become showy. You put it in and you're like, eh. And then the next year you're like, wow, that's looking good. And then all of a sudden you're like, look at my yard. If you just fill your yard with annuals, it's expensive and exhausting. And if you just put in perennials, it sometimes feels a little lackluster. You need that excitement of that new. So recognizing that certain people fit that annual thing, and that doesn't in any way diminish the beauty of them in your life for that period. Right?
Love that. And then
Yeah.
another way I've heard that said that really felt good for me, because I feel like when I have people in my life, I carry them very deeply, is, how you have a tree and it has its leaves that are there for a season. They're a part of you and they grow with you and they're a beautiful expression of you. But then come fall, the leaves fall off. Some people are like those leaves. And then, every year,
Right.
they move out of your life. Some people are like the branches in your life. And sometimes you're like, these are my branches. This is a core part of me. But sometimes your branches fall off. And that's okay. Sometimes there's a branch that gets pruned off or trimmed back. And then you have the core of you and your roots. And that's like your core people, the core that are always there.
I love all these landscaping analogies. It's funny because we're really talking more about cultivated landscaping. This last week, I recorded a podcast with Julia and Christine, who uses the metaphors of the old growth forest. That's a different kind of thing, right? We're not intentionally planting those. She talks about the beauty in nature and how the tree shades the fern without any agreement. That's just how they live. If the tree loses its limb, it's not like all the ferns go and say, hey, I mean, obviously they don't talk, and that's not what she said, but I don't know where I was going with that. But there's this acceptance of our roles, and we all have this symbiotic way of working together. So I love the analogies, and it makes me think about the planting we were doing yesterday to honor the young man who lost his life. We purposely bought some perennials, even though we bought some annuals too. We wanted something that would flower and come back, and we could think of them.
I want to share something because
Yeah.
I was working with my animal spirit deck yesterday. Before I go to bed, I asked, what do I need to know for tomorrow? I got the ant card and it was all about teamwork. I actually got it reversed, which is in protective mode. It says, you don't always have to do it by yourself. It was a really good reminder. It was one of the reasons why I was like, I need to get on the transit report today and be with my people.
Right?
Especially as we've talked about being with your people and having the thing and letting it land. Been little sprinkles of that message that just keeps zinging in throughout the whole thing. So
That's
I
awesome.
just want to take a second and thank you both for being part of my tribe.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Love
Part of
you.
our-
And I love that we're all wearing pink.
Right?
Like, I mean,
I know, I keep trying to sit up enough so that you see more of my pink, but I remember the other thing I was going to say. It was, I shared in last week's transit report that I had an old friend from high school, my best friend from high school, who we'd grown apart, and she passed away that week. And there was the mental loops going of what's the right thing to do because we were no longer close. She had been a really bright flower in that season of my life. And I feel like this analogy really honors her in that way. We grew very differently. I had this moment Friday night. My daughter and I went out to this local city center place to get something to eat, and they started doing it. We wound up getting there late because she had to work. It was really late for me to be eating dinner. I think we didn't even eat our dinner until close to 9. They had music and were playing some fun songs, and my daughter was totally loving it. We couldn't even talk to each other because it was so loud. And all of a sudden, they started to play Paradise by the Dashboard Light. And I was like, oh my God, do you know this song? And she's like, yeah, I know this song. And I started to cry. It was the first time I'd really cried since I teared up a little bit because I could just totally picture this friend of mine in her little tie-dyed t-shirt that she would sleep in when we have sleepovers. And she'd be in her underwear in the tie-dyed t-shirt, singing into her hairbrush, singing this song and jumping up on her bed to sing it, the part where it starts really going crazy. And she was just so fun. And I just really remembered that bit. And so it was a really good way to remember that people are in your life for different reasons at different times, right?
That's beautiful.
It's I'm making all you open. And solar plex is really uncomfortable, I'm sure.
No,
But-
you take that back. You don't get to say that.
Okay.
That was beautiful.
good.
It feels so full of love and vulnerability and sharing and connection. Those are the most beautiful feelings that you just shared. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Kathy, when you show up with vulnerabilities like that, you enable everybody else to be in that space as well. So do more.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Permission to soften that energy that's harsh right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And you're such an astrology, like you're so knowledgeable in astrology. That's why I always am encouraging you to just, do you have one bit of anything you thought about that you might want to share with us before we say?
Well, we're in a big T square right now. You've got Mars opposite Pluto and the new moon, which actually they are exactly conjunct right now.
Wow.
The moon and the sun are at 7 degrees. They're just a few seconds apart. But with Hecate at the other end, making a T square, it's a very strong aspect. It can be very troublesome, but it calls on everybody to really act. In other words, if you're a frog in a rut and you can't get out of it and a big truck comes along, you're going to get out of that rut.
Yeah.
That's where we're at right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm nervous to step in on these Zoom calls. So thank you
for
for
that.
letting
I'm
me
so glad
hide.
that we finally were able to call you out.
I'm a
watching so
line
many
profile.
times.
That's what.
Yeah.
What? I'm a second line profile.
Yeah. You have so much wisdom, and I'm just so grateful for you to share it with our listeners or
Well,
viewers.
thank
And
you.
so
I kind of tell myself I'm retired, but when somebody gives me a yell, I'm always willing to do a chart for them and a session. And it's like, how do you turn down somebody that really wants help? I can't do it.
right.
And thank you so much for holding these. They're so informative. I have been through all 4 levels of human design.
Mm-hmm.
I still speak astrology much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
anytime you have a first language and a second language, the first
well,
language is always
I've been doing this astrology for over 50 years. And so it's like, but
yeah.
like a good little generator, I never passed my 4th course of human design. I flatlined and stopped.
You didn't
Took
do
it
it.
twice and pretty much understand it. Never took the test.
Yeah. Well, it's just a piece of paper, right? Or just a little picture. I don't even have a piece of paper. I have an image that says I passed the test, right? But
Well, and
no.
whenever I do readings with somebody, I always have their human design and the astrology up on my screen
Mm-hmm.
because it gives me information on how they're going to understand what I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just, if I know kind of how they're threaded, not each modality has their strengths and their weaknesses, and they work beautifully together. But yeah, I'm mostly an astrologer.
Yeah.
So we love and we totally invite you and anybody else. We're playing. We're playing in the energy, putting on the clothes and going, how does this show up for you? Embodying it and learning it in that way where there's just no pressure, right? You
Right.
don't have to know the thing. You don't have to have the thing. And this is a place that we get to have fun with it. One somewhere is going to know something about it. If you don't, if you ever have something to share, absolutely, please do.
I love play shops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did I do?
Just 2 days ago, I was doing some work with my human design map from Christine Ing, and she was talking about her midheaven and the gate it was in. And I was like, I mean to do that, and I never do that. So I was looking up where my midheaven and my ascendant and my descendant, what gates those are in, because even though they don't give definition to the chart, they certainly give flavor. I learned so much just looking at those 3 because I had never really investigated those gates before. And I discovered that my midheaven is in gate 18. It's conjunct my Pluto. And so it's like, well, no wonder I feel that Pluto energy so much. It's my midheaven. But I hadn't ever really put together why that gate was such strong energy for me. The astrology piece should never be downplayed. We have to remember that definition isn't the end all of whatever, because those undefined gates, or even the defined gates that are in weird planets and we don't understand, there's a bigger picture, and just keep digging.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I especially am very fond of bringing in asteroids and other, that's why I know where Hecate is at right now. It's a big player. Whenever I do a chart for a person, I will run the list of asteroids and see if any of them are conjunct any of their natal planets. And it gives so much definition to who they are.
Mm.
I'm a big fan of Kim Gould, who does a lot with that. I don't know if you follow her.
I first heard of her maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I don't follow her regularly. I'm mostly in the astrology part.
And she
but
does
I've
asteroids and
also-
human design.
She doesn't get in real deep with the asteroids and the centaurs. I wish she would go deeper, but
I always joke
the
that her blogs are like a college course. Because when you read her blogs, there's so many links to other blogs, and I always have to go on all of them.
of all levels.
Yeah, so it's really great. And I will say one thing, and then we probably should wrap this up. On the Genetic Matrix app, there is a report you can do where you can see your human design chart with the astrology, and it will give you all the astrological houses for each of the gates. It also tells you the gate that your midheaven is. I'm pretty sure my midheaven is gate 43, which is interesting because that's on my undefined ajna. Is 43 a Scorpio gate? No, 43 is a Taurus gate, right?
I have to look it up.
I don't know. It's okay. I'll figure it out. Thank you so much. I had so much fun with you guys, and I don't think we missed any comments or questions in the group. So remember, you can listen now on podcast platforms, but peace out, everybody.